Hey folks, throughout the Harbinger of Ruin cycle, Frostclaw has become one of the most meta and probably overpowered skills in the game. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about it as somebody who's probably put several hundred hours into playing just Frostclaw builds alone. So hopefully some of the knowledge I'm going to share today will help you play your Frostclaw builds a little better, or maybe help you theory craft a new version of a Frostclaw build or come up with something totally new in the future. So yeah, definitely stay tuned if you want to learn a little bit more about Frostclaw. So jumping right into it, the main reason I would say Frostclaw is probably overpowered is just the sheer number of hits that you're able to apply with the skill. So as I've said before in my previous videos, you can apply up to 25 hits per cast with just Frostclaw alone. That's before any other triggers or procs that you're doing, just Frostclaw. And a lot of people are confused by that statement. They don't really understand how that works or how it's possible. So before I go any further, I am going to explain the technical details of that specifically. So when you just have the base Frostclaw skill, nothing else on it, it does one hit. So here we have an unspec'd Frostclaw, and we have a weapon with exactly 100% chance to shred. We get one hit. So this is kind of reasonable as expected. There are multiple projectiles, but they do not shotgun. So once you grab Frostclaw and you path down to Volley of Glass, also keep in mind Hand of Morditis adds 2 projectiles, so you go from 3 to 5, and then Volley of Glass allows them to shotgun. So at this point, we now have 5 stacks of shred when we hit the enemy. And also keep in mind that as long as the projectiles hit or pass through an enemy at any point in the cast, it still counts as a hit. So if I stand right next to the enemy and I cast through it, we still get those hits. It doesn't matter that you're not hitting them directly, it still counts. So that will be important for later, keep that in mind. So at this point, as I said, we have 5 hits. If you start to add the extra cast from these nodes over here, so for example, you have a second cast here, it actually allows Frostclaw to hit on the initial cast and then immediately hit again on the recast. So if I go like this, you can see I got 10 stacks of shred. So we actually went from 5 hits to 10 hits just by grabbing that node. Pretty crazy. So that's double the damage, double the ailments applied, double the damage effectiveness, basically really, really crazy. And the reason why that happens is because for the initial cast, it hits the enemy at the end of the cast, and then on the recast, it hits at the beginning, but it looks like they're all applying at the same time. So it actually gets even crazier than that. So you'll notice that we have all of these extra casts. So the third cast behind the target, that doesn't actually help us yet for single target. So you can see here, it just bounces off into the distance. Not useful yet, but it will be later. So we're still at 10 hits. Once you add the Frostclaw is also cast back towards you, this applies at the end of the first cast. So the cast that normally bounces to the enemy and away, there's now another one that bounces to the enemy and back to you. So this splits the Frostclaw into 2 separate projectiles that are bouncing in different directions. You can now see we'll have 15 stacks of shred. So both of the bounces that are going away from the enemy, they're all hitting it with all 5 projectiles. So that's how you end up with 15. This is pretty crazy already. As I said, that's 15 times as many ailments applied, such as shred and poison, bleed, ignite, whatever. It also means that at this point, we go from 100% effectiveness from a hit essentially to 1500% damage effectiveness. That's already more than you get from Meteor, just with these nodes that we have in Frostclaw. Not even mentioning the crazy amounts of shred. If you have like 100 stacks of shred, that's over 50% more damage from non-physical alone. So that's also crazy. And then all the other things you can do with that, pretty nuts. But yeah, as I said, that's already 1500% damage effectiveness. You can actually take it another level further by using Frozen Malice. So this is a auto-targeting node. And remember how I said this third cast is actually useless? With the Frozen Malice, you can make that somewhat useless bounce into something useful. So you can actually cause the third cast that normally goes away from the enemy to become something that can hit the enemy too. So just an example of how Frozen Malice works, it has a range of 3 to 9 meters. So 3 meters is the minimum. If you attack the enemy directly, you can't get a bounce because it's under that 3 meters, so it would be below the minimum. If you attack here, for example, though, you can see it bounces back through the enemy. What's interesting is if you stand close to the enemy and you attack through it, not only do you get the normal cast that would return back to you hitting, you also get the cast that would normally bounce off into the distance. That one also goes back to the enemy. And both of those additional casts recast the third cast through the enemy. So in total, you go from 3 hits to 5. So 5 times 5 is 25 hits. So if we stand near the enemy and we attack away and have it bounce through the enemy, you can see we're actually getting 25 hits off of that. Now your positioning is a little bit finicky. It's much easier to do on large enemies like bosses. For something small like a dummy, it's kind of hard to do, but yeah, if you're fighting like pretty much any boss or Aberoth or Jorah or whatever, this is going to be very, very easy to reproduce. Another cool tech that I haven't really seen people do is that if you're going for a low mana cost Frostclaw, instead of pathing through Ever Onward, you can actually path through Frozen Malice, and you won't actually be giving up any of your hits. However, your mana cost will be much lower, and you will have the auto-targeting of Frozen Malice. So here we have 28.6 mana cost, and if I instead take Frozen Malice, you can see we still have the 15 stacks of Shred, except our mana cost is down to 24, so we just saved 4. This difference actually gets even larger the more you have reduction of mana. So for example, if we're doing the Firestarter setup, you can see we have 4.4 with the Frozen Malice, and 8.8 with Frostclaw. So literally doing Frozen Malice instead of Ever Onward, if you're doing the Ignite stacking, could cut your cost in half or even more. So this tech is probably going to be quite useful for some builds. Once you take the Spark Charges, those also apply hits. So those 25 Frostclaw hits, you're actually getting 25 Spark Charge hits. So we spec into Spark Charge. There you can see 50 stacks of Shred from a single hit. Absolutely insane. That's 50 hits right there. That's 5,000% damage effectiveness. Because the Frostclaw itself is 100% per hit. The Spark Charge is also 100%. So yeah, 5,000% damage effectiveness. And you can do this like 3-4 times per second. You're spamming it. It's actually insane. You have all the base damage getting multiplied. So that's 20 per for Spark Charge and Frostclaw. So 40 times 50. That's already 2,000 base damage just from that. And then all of the added damage, like ailments, so say you get like 100% chance to bleed or something, you're applying 50 stacks of bleed. I think that's like 2,500 damage or something like that before any multipliers. I could be wrong. The same goes with Ignite too. You can get 1,000 stacks of Ignite extremely easily. Like none of that is an issue at all. And then Shred, as I mentioned before, we'll jump over to some of my sheets here. So Shred with Frostclaw, you can basically get to soft cap of Shred with pretty much a single affix, or even something like Mad Alchemist Ladle. And you can see here with basically 0 effort, Frostclaw is going to give you about 54 to 60% more non-physical damage. Like this is an insane multiplier. With something like Glacier or even Meteor, like it can be very difficult to get up to this. You probably want more than 1 affix. But yeah, with Frostclaw, you're pretty much getting Shred stack for free. If you're doing Ignites, Frostbites, any of that stuff, you're getting hundreds of stacks with minimal investment. If you're doing the insane Spark Charge build, you're applying 20 plus of these per hit, or per cast, 100 plus Spark Charges per second. Then you have the Fragment of the Enigma, you're adding a bunch of flat damage to that. It's actually insane. And before we move on to some of the other reasons why the skill is completely insane, I do have a bit of a spreadsheet here just to compare damage to another popular skill. At this point, we'll say you're probably around like level 50 or so. I've added in the multipliers here that Glacier typically has while leveling. So something like this is what you're looking at. And in total, you're going to have effectively around 1500% damage effectiveness for Glacier. And Glacier is pretty strong, and it's also one of those high mana cost abilities. So spamming Glacier, this is roughly what you're working with single target. If you have 50 added damage, maybe you have a wand or something like that, or an early game staff, you're going to be doing around 1000 damage with your Glacier. If it's a boss, it's going to be around 2000 damage, so not bad. For like level 50 something, that's actually pretty solid. If you take Frostclaw, before you even add spark charges or any of that stuff, if you're doing the 25 hit tech that I just showed you, you're already doing 1750 damage. That's just like the base bare minimum with like nothing. As you add more stuff, it just gets crazier from there. So if we say maybe you have 100% chance to apply Ignite or something like that, right? So you're having, we'll say 50 damage per hit of ailment damage. That's without any ailment scaling. You can see with basically no investment early on, you're already jumping up to like 3000 damage. And for Glacier, that's only hitting like 3 times, you get basically nothing. So Frostclaw's already taking off. And as I mentioned before, with the Shred, you're probably getting 50 to 60% more damage with Frostclaw just for free because of how easy it is to get Shred cap on this skill. So I'm not even factoring that in or any of the extra damage that you do actually have in the Frostclaw tree. So like you have a little bit here, you have a little bit here. I'm not counting any of that. And yeah, it just gets crazier from here. So if you add the Arcane Current, so the node in Sorcerer that gives you 100% chance to apply spark charges, you can see we go from 2500 effectiveness, as I said, to 5000. So now we have 50 hits, 5000% effectiveness, and 6000 damage already at this point, super early on in the game. And that's only with 50 added generic damage and no damage at all. Like we don't have Enigma, we don't have anything. So that's pretty insane. So let's say maybe you get a little bit higher level and maybe you do add Enigma. So you can see Enigma, because of how many hits we're doing, that 12% chance is actually giving us even more hits. So you get the extra 3 from the 25 hits, it takes you to 28. So in total, we have about 53 hits. So yeah, that's already pretty cool. And if we say you start stacking up a little bit of int, maybe say that you have 70 int, which would add 140 flat damage. So we'll say you add 140, we're already at over 10,000 damage. And this is like super early game stuff, right? When you have, for example, like 190 int, or even like 200, which is like probably the max you're going to get end game, you'd have 400 flat damage here. You're probably, you might have ailments. But yeah, this is starting to get pretty insane already. And this is like not even factoring in any more multipliers. It's not factoring in Shred. It's not factoring in the like 1500% increased damage that you have. All of that stuff. And this is just per cast, right? Like, I think it's kind of hard to state just how insane Frostclaw is, but this hopefully helps give a little bit of an idea. And if you want to play like your Frostbite build or your Ignite build or whatever, like this is why this is so insane. Like you're getting all of these things for free. You're getting Shred Cap for free. You're getting the Ignites. You're getting all these hits. Like everything that you're applying on hit is like multiplied basically to the moon. And then moving back to the game, there's some other really insane stuff in the Frostclaw tree as well. This node right here gives you pretty much permanent ailment immunity because of how often it's casting. Like this is insane alone. If you get into endgame, you know how deadly ailments can be. Stuff like Shred or Frailty or even Poison. Like there's some very high damage poison stuff. You can pretty much ignore that. Like on my hardcore character, I never bothered to max my poison res because I'm pretty much always cleansing it. The only one that you really care about is the the ground effects, and even those they're not too bad. So yeah, the ailment cleanse is nuts. You're cleansing like slows and chills and all that stuff. Really, really crazy stuff here. And then on top of that, you can also choose whether you want cold, fire, or lightning frostclaw. So you can mix and match as you want. You want to do ignite, you do fire frostclaw. You convert all your chills to ignites, get even more. You want to do something with lightning, you scale the lightning damage. So maybe you're doing like Velatria or something, hit based. You can grab this one and then scale that. And then on top of that, a lot of the things in the Frostclaw tree actually apply on every cast, not just the direct cast. So like this node here, for example, it says 4 ward gained on cast. This is per indirect cast. So all of these extra nodes, they give you a total of 5 casts. This is actually 20 ward gained per direct cast, essentially, per point. So like if you take 3 out of 3, you get 60 ward each time you cast Frostclaw, just from this one node. And the same applies to this node here. So it says ward per 40% freeze rate multiplier. It's actually more like ward per 8% because it applies per indirect cast. So if you take, we'll say you take this node, and then you take something like this in the teleport tree that gives you 600% freeze rate multi, this is giving you something like 75 ward gained per cast just by taking these nodes here with this node in Frostclaw. So freeze rate multi, the synergy is actually insane how much ward it gives you. And then you can even take that further and you can get a bunch of base crit if you want, which also gives freeze rate multi. And then you can turn your freeze rate multi into crit, essentially, which gives you even more ward per cast. So you're already getting like a pretty crazy amount, and you can get even more from that. And then on top of that, if you want, you can even go like a low mana cost Frostclaw, like try and get super low mana cost. Maybe you don't take Volley of Blast, maybe you don't take some of the extra casts. You can take the mana efficiency here, and then you can spam it with something like the Firestarter's Tours. So if you go, I have a good one somewhere. I don't actually know where I put it. But anyway, if you have something like this is a Scepter, so you can get even more minus mana on it. And yeah, you could have an insane Ignite Frostclaw if you want. And then another thing you can do that's still completely viable is you could even path up here, take Ellie Nova, which this one also, similar to the other nodes, applies per indirect cast. So if you have 3 out of 3 here, you're getting multiple Ellie Novas per cast. And those all do their own crazy stuff, whatever you have spec'd. So that's pretty good. And if you do take that, you actually don't even need to take Volley of Glass. Because these, even though the Frostclaw itself won't shotgun anymore, these still do shotgun. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys learned something today. That was, that's been my Frostclaw video. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.